Hi everyone. First, I'll start off by saying what SPIN means, because it's a bit of a mouthful. SPIN stands for Systematic Profiling in Neurological Conditions. It's a registry, a database of people living with all neurological conditions. We take everyone, okay? And we include people who are carers as well. And it's a registry from which we draw from to ask questions and invite people into our studies. And today we'll be covering off some of the early results from 2 of our studies, and we'll talk a bit about future directions. Our goal in SPIN is to improve the lives of people living with neurological conditions. We know that, the ultimate thing is to get to a cure, but you have to live with where you are at the moment, and so that's our focus. And it involves conversations with communities about their needs, their thoughts, and their priorities. It's about evaluating changes in people's health, their cognition, their mood, their movement, their sleep, their fatigue levels, their pain, and how this impacts on their quality of life. We evaluate people's biology, particularly their genetics, and how these influence the disease-related changes to their health. And from this information, we develop tailored interventions such as SAVOR and Enlightened, which our 2 speakers that follow will tell you about. And these target areas of need like emotional well-being, fatigue, and sleep. For us, central to everything that we do, hearing from the community is vitally important to us, because we don't believe you can develop good research programs that meet needs if you don't hear from the community. So from a very early point in the SPIN research program, we wanted to understand the priorities of the neurological community, and we did that initially by a priority setting workshop. And this workshop identified the things that you see up there, a number of research priorities, and this included mental health, emotional well-being, fatigue, and sleep, which we're currently targeting with the SAVOR and Enlightened trials. The SPIN registry is very much the backbone of our research program. Thanks to MSWA, we were funded just at the beginning of the pandemic. So we suddenly realized that we actually couldn't see all these people we needed to see, and we developed ways of reaching them. So we developed ways of getting out to the community. So the SPIN registry is an observational study. So we observe, we watch people as they go through what happens for them. It evaluates health and biological changes in people living with neurological conditions annually. It's very comprehensive, and it includes specialised health, lifestyle, and biological assessments. And the information gathered helps us to understand the changes that people go through and identify needs that can be targeted in interventions. And we also formulate health profiles that we give to people so they can take to their health providers as well. And over the last 6 months, we've successfully piloted our remote program, which means we can actually deliver this in places where people can't actually come to us, far away from the central Perth, or people who can't come because of work or other health issues. So regional, remote areas, and even interstate. And following each assessment point, we give a report of the results which people can take to their specialists, and Travis and Mitchell will talk a little bit more about them. So shortly I'll hand you over to Dr. Mitchell Turner and then Dr. Travis Cruikshank, who will talk about the 2 sub-studies in the program. So Dr. Mitchell Turner is a qualified sleep scientist and a chronobiologist with a background in strength and conditioning. He's currently a researcher in the SPIN team at ECU, Edith Cowan University. His role involves coordinating trials to improve sleep and to reduce fatigue for people with neurological conditions. Dr. Cruikshank is a neuroscientist and principal investigator on the SPIN program as well as on the WA NeuroHub project, which he'll tell you about. And Dr. Cruikshank's work centres on the design, delivery, and evaluation of tailored lifestyle interventions for people living with neurological conditions. And with that, I'll hand you over to Mitchell.
So as Maura mentioned, I'm going to be discussing a trial called SAVOR, which we've just recently completed. Before I start, I'd like to just acknowledge the team that's involved in SAVOR. We are led by Professor Maura Sim as well as Professor Joanne Dixon, and we have other members of the core SPIN team involved as well. as well as international collaborators that have helped contribute to the design and implementation of this trial. So as Moira mentioned, we ran a priority setting this needs workshop, and mental wellbeing was one of the main areas that people acknowledged that they wanted work or research to be performed in. In fact, wellbeing was actually number 2 on this priority setting workshop. So just to clarify the difference between mental wellbeing and mental health, because we often hear about mental health, but it is often referring to mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. Whereas mental wellbeing is something that we all experience every day, and it acts on a continuum, which means it can be good and bad, and it can fluctuate throughout the day depending on events that happen in our life. So this intervention is really focused on trying to improve our mental wellbeing rather than focusing on mental health. To try and improve mental wellbeing, we developed an intervention called SAVOR, which is an effective savouring and anticipation task. So this is a very short task that involves reflecting on a positive memory. This could be something as simple as hugging a loved one or visiting a place that you really enjoyed. And then the anticipation part of that is to try and look forward to that task happening again. Often in our day-to-day lives, we can get caught up focusing on negative things, and we don't often reflect on positive parts of our life. And the idea of this tool is to try and help train us or train our body to cope or to improve our mental well-being, which will then allow us to cope with situations that may occur in our life that could negatively affect our well-being. So we're trying to actually improve our resilience before potential mental health issues could arise. This slide gives a brief summary or brief overview of the trial design. So what we did in this trial is that we had a staggered baseline, which, if I can get this pointer, so you can see here in the blue. And then we had an assessment time point in the green here. During this time, we had people visit with a registered clinical psychologist who explained and delivered the SAVOR intervention. They then got a recording of the intervention, which was about 10 minutes in duration, that they could take home with them and use on a daily basis. And they did this for a week here. They then attended another session with that psychologist to refresh and to ask any questions they may have before they did another week with the intervention at home. Following this period, we then did a brief assessment that we also had performed at the start here to see what effects that this trial may have had. In this trial, we had 17 people. This was individuals living with a neurological condition. So this included people with various neurological conditions, from stroke to FND and MS. On average, people were around 53 years of age, and we had a good balance of both males and females in the study, as well as a good balance of people both living with and without a mental health issue. So the main outcome of this study was feasibility. So feasibility basically means, was it safe? Did people adhere to the intervention? And were they able to not only do it, but were they able to do it effectively? So some of the numbers we have here is we had a 85% retention. So people that started the trial, we had 85% complete the trial. And we had 100% of people attend all the testing sessions with the psychologist that I spoke about before. Of the at-home sessions here, we had 85% complete this on a daily basis. So all in all, we were really happy with these numbers, and it showed good promise with this trial. Some of the, you can see here in the figure, we measured people's daily effect, and so this is both positive and negative, as well as another effect called safe and warm, which is similar to positive. And whilst it wasn't the primary aim of this trial, we did see that there were slight improvements in both positive and safe and warm effect throughout the trial, and there was a slight decrease in negative effect. So again, this is really promising. Whilst this is only very small numbers and a very short duration trial, it does give us a good reason to continue on with larger trials to investigate this further. As I mentioned, we did assessments both before and after the trial, and this was to measure things like depression, anxiety, mental well-being, and also quality of life. And some of the promising findings we did see in this was that both depression and mental well-being did improve throughout the trial. And as I mentioned before, this wasn't obviously the primary outcome, and it's a very small sample size. But again, it's promising findings and something that we would look to explore further in a larger trial. This trial has completed. However, we are running this same trial at the moment in people living just with MS. And we are currently recruiting for this trial. So we've got about half our sample size on board already, but we are still looking for more people. So if you are interested in participating in this trial, please contact Manual Laws at this website here, or you can visit our website through this QR code. And I believe we also have some flyers as well. So if you are interested, you can come see us after and we can provide them to you. But I'll hand over to Dr. Travis Cruikshank now to talk about Enlightened.
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today to speak with all of you. I mean, we do this research for you and we're really happy to see a great attendance. I'm going to be talking about the Enlightened trial today, but I'm also going to be talking a little bit about some of the future research that we'll be undertaking. So the Enlightened trial is looking at the effects of light therapy for people living with neurological conditions. I'm going to be talking about our MS trial today. You can see behind me the SPIN team up there, so it's not just myself, it's a big team that's involved in delivering these research projects. And you can also see our world-class collaborators below that we work regularly with. So, why did we start this work? Well, first of all, as Maura's already pointed out, when we did our priority setting workshop, people came to us and they said that fatigue, exhaustion and sleep were significant issues that were impacting their activities of daily living. And we wanted to target these rather invisible or hidden features of the condition. We know that fatigue is very, very common, and we know that of the people that do experience fatigue, 50% of these individuals say that fatigue is among their worst symptoms. And a large percentage of people living with MS also report to us that sleep's a significant issue. And we know that it can negatively impact their mood, activities of daily living, employment, so the ability to sustain employment, but also when they're working, the ability to carry out their normal working activities, and of course their quality of life. So that's where Enlightened started. The Enlightened trial, as I said, was looking at the effects of light therapy, and we're comparing it to sleep health guidelines. So we're looking for 58 people living with MS. We're at about 90% recruitment now, so we're still looking for a few more people to complete this trial. And we're looking at the effects of 4 weeks of light therapy plus sleep health guidelines versus sleep health guidelines alone. And this trial, like you've heard many of us talk about today, we're looking at safety and tolerability. We want to make sure that it's safe, people are enjoying the light therapy, they're happy to do the light therapy, and the actual trial itself is tolerable. And then we're also looking at the potential effects or benefits of light therapy on fatigue and sleep. So this is what the trial looks like if you're a participant within the trial. So we ask people to do baseline assessments, we get people to do sleep questionnaires, we get them to wear a wearable device on their wrist that evaluates sleep-wake behaviour, and then we also get people to provide a saliva sample. And you're probably wondering why we're getting people to provide a saliva sample. That saliva sample contains DNA, and down the track what we want to do is we want to look and see whether people's genetics is influencing their ability to respond to certain interventions. And this is what a lot of us are looking at in the general field, and this is precision medicine. After people undertake the baseline assessment, they're randomised to one of 2 groups, the light therapy group plus sleep health guidelines, or the sleep health guidelines alone. Now, we don't have a passive control group where people receive nothing. Sleep health guidelines is actually an intervention in itself. So following this 4-week period, we get people to do those same assessments that they did at baseline, and then they go into a washout period, and you've heard a little bit about a washout period this morning from Jenny, and this is basically to see whether any effects that are sustained from either the light therapy or the sleep health guidelines are sustained over a certain period of time. And finally, we do one final assessment point, which is exactly the same as the previous 2. So I've told you a little bit about the trial. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit of the preliminary findings that we have. So we're going to start with more the feasibility aspects of this study. So as Maura has already pointed out, we started a lot of this research right during the peak of COVID, where things were a little bit challenging and it was more difficult to see people. So a lot of the assessments that we're asking people to do were actually sent via mail out. And what this has done, if I could just highlight here, this has actually increased the number of days that people are staying in the trial. So this is a little bit longer than what we expected. Part of it's to do with the mail out, part of it's to do with a few people becoming sick or forgetting to do assessments, and part of it's also to do with relapses. But I want to bring your attention to here, and this is the number of participants that we've retained within the study. So 88%, that's a really, really good number. So only 12% of people actually dropped out of this study, and this was largely due to personal reasons. We've seen a very, very low side effect profile to do with the actual light therapy itself. So people have had some minor eye discomfort, a few people have had a few headaches, but it's been very minor, nothing major. But an interesting finding with this study, and this is, I suppose, the unexpected findings, as Jenny alluded to earlier on, is that only 52% of people actually met the eligibility criteria for this trial. So when we started this trial, we wanted to make it very, very rigid. And within this trial, we actually included a risk of sleep apnea assessment. We call it a Berlin questionnaire. And a lot of people in this study, as you can see, about 48% of people were excluded because of this risk of sleep apnea. So moving forward, one of our goals in our research program is to actually understand more about sleep apnea, the number of people who have it, and also potential treatment options, because sleep is a big facet of our research program. So now I'm going to talk about the effects on fatigue and sleep quality. So unfortunately, we didn't see any robust impact of light therapy on fatigue in either group. You can see basically the baseline and the intervention, post-intervention assessment is roughly about the same. So light therapy and sleep health guidelines don't seem to have a robust positive effect. But we have to also consider the design of the study. So did we give people a long enough period with the light therapy? Was the light therapy in the morning when it was administered long enough? Was the wavelength of the light appropriate enough or optimal? But what we did find is that in the sleep health guidelines group, in terms of sleep quality, we found a deterioration over a 4-week period. Now, this deterioration may be due to the disease process. This may also be due to people actually understanding their sleep better going through the actual trial. But in the light therapy group, who also received sleep health guidelines, we don't see that negative effect. In fact, we see a small positive effect. So we've got our sleep health guidelines group that is showing quite a modest decline in sleep quality, and our light therapy group that is showing a small improvement. So this is suggesting to us that light therapy may have a positive impact on sleep quality. And as I mentioned before, this trial is nearing its conclusion. We're still seeking about 8 people. So if you're interested in undertaking this trial, interested in looking at a potential treatment option for fatigue or sleep, please contact us. Here's our details here, and you can also use our QR code, or we'll be around a little bit later if you want to have a chat. Okay, so we've all spoken a little bit about some of the work we're currently doing. I'm going to briefly speak about some of the work that's coming up in the future. I'm going to talk about 3 projects in particular. We actually have more projects than this, but I think these are 3 highly relevant projects. The first one is the Improved Sleep Health Project, and it's being directed by Dr. Mitchell Turner over there, and it's in collaboration with the Occupational Therapy Department at MSWA. The purpose of this project is to comprehensively evaluate sleep and then to come up with tailored treatment options for people, say, experiencing obstructive sleep apnea, insomnia, and so on. So we found that finding in the light therapy trial that a lot of people are presenting at risk for sleep apnea, and we want to understand that a little bit more. This next project is 3D food printing, and this is from our Nutrition and Dietetics Department. It's led by Professor Amanda Devine at ECU. And this project is looking at the suitability of 3D printed food for people that may be experiencing swallowing difficulties. And what it does is it can actually 3D print the food into different shapes, different textures. It can introduce different supplements into the food as well. So it can introduce supplements that would increase vitamins, minerals. It can also introduce supplements that may improve the gut microbiome, which is a really, really, I suppose, hot topic at the moment. The final project is we're looking to co-design a meal box for the neurological community. So there are a lot of diets out there in the MS community at the moment, and there's a lot of social insecurity as well with COVID and other things in Australia. Meal boxes are becoming a very, very popular way of preparing meals. What we want to do is we want to develop a tailored meal box that is designed around healthy eating recommendations for people living with MS that can also accommodate various ability levels, various swallowing levels, and we can also move forward with a very cost-effective model. And the only way we can do this is by working with members of the community, such as yourself, health professionals, industry, and researchers. So if you want to hear a little bit more about this, come and see us after the talk. And then I want to talk about this final initiative because I think it's relevant to, definitely to the research community, but also consumers living with various neurological conditions. And this is the NeuroHub project, the WA NeuroHub project, and we've been very, very fortunate that MSWA has funded this project. And the whole point of it is to co-design an online health and research platform with the neurological community. Not for, with. So we want to work with you to create this platform so that it meets your needs and your priorities. And we've partnered with Perrin on this project, and we've got a number of other stakeholders, as you can see here. So a number of other not-for-profit organisations are also working with us, as well as health departments, as well as other researchers. And it's trying to target some big systemic problems like scattered health data. We're trying to put it in one location so it empowers you to take that to your various health professionals. Other things, up-to-date health service directories, and also up-to-date research directories. So you may be interested in interventions, which a lot of us have spoken about today, but you may be interested in registry studies or qualitative studies, and you should have the right to see all this research information in one spot and then make informed decisions about what research you might want to participate in. So these are some of the things that we want to capture, but most importantly, we want to hear what you want and what you think the platform should look like. So who are we looking for? We're looking for people living with a neurological condition, caregivers, health service providers, industry specialists, and researchers. And we would like you to attend a 90-minute to a 2-hour workshop where we discuss what this platform will look like, what will be the content, who will the users be, what information should it contain, what are the features that you may want. Brings us to the end. So if you want to hear more about this research or any of the other research that we're currently doing, please get in contact with us. We really want to hear from you. We want your opinions. We want your contributions to shape our research project, because there's no point us doing research that's not going to meet your needs. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
So is there a science or is a theory behind the light therapy?
That's a really good question. So the light in which we're using here is a green-blue light. Blue and rich light has been shown in preclinical models as well as just healthy simulations to increase basically the activity of arousal pathways within our brain, which we're trying to use to combat that fatigue. So that's why we're using it. The green aspect of the light is more from a safety perspective, because when you have that blue and rich light or you have that bright light, it can be damaging for the eyes. So that's why these glasses have that green tinge to them.
What is the intervention? I'm just talking about the intervention. I'm just curious, what is the intervention?
So regarding the SAVOR intervention, is that what you're referring to? Yes. The intervention itself is it's a 10-minute audio recording that people get given, and the idea is that they can do that in their own time at any time of the day, and it's that reflecting on that positive memory. So you're reflecting on a positive memory, and then you're trying to train yourself to experience those positive emotions, and then anticipate or look forward to that memory occurring again in the future. So it's kind of like trying to train our body to think of the positives in life rather than just a lot of the negatives that we can often get caught up in.
Like plan a hope? Planning a hope?
Yes. Yeah, in a way. So it's hope, but it's probably more around things that you know are going to happen again. So it can be, like I said, visiting a place that you really enjoyed, or hugging a loved one, or something like that. Something that you know that can happen again in the future, that you can anticipate that looking forward to that again, rather than something like, you know, a wedding day or something like that, which obviously, you know, it might not happen again in the future. So
if you're having to do this trial and
Sorry.
you have to do the other one we talked about, I can't remember. Sort of.
the light therapy or the TMS.
Yeah, the tennis, can you do them at the same time, or is that going to affect the
We'd probably say, from our perspective, it's probably better to do them separately, just because we don't know then what effects are causing what. So, yeah.
The question was, how long does the light therapy trial take?
Will take around 12 weeks to complete. And we're not experiencing as many issues as I suppose we did in the beginning, with people getting obviously unwell and sick and problems with mail out and things like that. So around 12 weeks.
And you'll take people with sleep apnea this time?
Not at this stage. We are looking at it in the future. We need to finish this trial. I think it was a big learning from this trial. We really didn't expect this many people to be at risk for sleep apnea. And this is some of the work that Mitchell's doing now with the MSOT department, is to start to work towards interventions for people with various sleep problems, because it's a big oversight. And we want to make sure that our interventions target the many, not the few.
So the question was just in regards to, are we measuring people that may be internal optimists before the trial starts? So yes, what we do is we have several assessments that happen before people start the trial, and that's looking at things like positive wellbeing, which is that optimist that you're referring to, as well as other aspects of quality of life, and like you said, we do measure depression, anxiety, and stress and stuff as well. Throughout the trial, we are, and I think I've got, I won't go back, it'll be back a fair way. We do daily assessments throughout that 2-week trial, where we are measuring positive and negative effect. And that's to look at how that may fluctuate or change throughout the trial.